Once again, we welcome our good friend, Dr. Arturo Brito, Executive Director of the Nicholson Foundation. Good to see you, Doctor.
Great to see you, Steve. Thanks.
We've been at this for less than a year. I can't even believe it. Our initiative called Right From the Start NJ. You'll be seeing the website up throughout the entire segment. That website has been made possible in large part because of your foundation. We've been working with the Terrell Fund and others on this initiative called Right From the Start. Right From the Start means?
Well, right from the start means that we really need to be focused on those first few years of life, birth and technically prenatally, up until at least the first 3 years of life, because they're so critical to not only the child at that time, but there can be lifelong consequences for that child if we don't do a better job of making sure that every child in the state of New Jersey has the potential to grow to his or her ability.
Doctor, let's make it clear so people understand your interest in this is not simply because you're the head, the executive director, the executive director of the Nicholson Foundation. Your clinical background is?
I'm a pediatrician. And my entire clinical practice professionally, there's one thing I found consistent with every single parent I saw, regardless of what background, regardless of what culture, regardless of what socioeconomic circumstance they were in, is that every parent wants their child to grow and develop to his or her potential. And that's why we focus on those first few years of life.
Talk about this. By the way, if you go on the website, you're going to see a whole range of articles and clips from previous segments, part of this ongoing series called Right From the Start NJ that we're doing and will continue to be doing. There's something called, and I've heard you talk about this in different seminars we've had, toxic stressors.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah. So toxic stressors refers to those stressors that can be persistent, that can be chronic and can be severe in anyone, but particularly in children. Examples include exposure to domestic violence, physical abuse, exposure to crime in the neighborhood, and even outright neglect of the needs of that child.
Is poverty included?
Extreme poverty that is persistent over long periods of time is absolutely included. It's one of those stressors that can become toxic.
How? The word toxic and stress, the first time I heard it was when you said it, again, at a forum. Define it versus, oh, that's regular stress.
Right. It's really important to understand that stress exists in life regardless, but stress doesn't have to become toxic. And there are positive stresses in life, and there are tolerable stresses, and then the most severe are toxic stressors. And toxic stressors happen, again, when there's a repeated exposure to abuse, domestic violence, and you go down the list. And particularly when there isn't a buffering system, a parent or an adult in that child's life that can help that child feel, or infant, that's just because we're talking about the first few years of life, feel secure, feel safe, help them through stressful events that are part of life. And that's why it's really important for everyone to understand. And this is why we have this Right From the Start NJ public awareness campaign. We want to make sure that all parents, policymakers, professionals, that everyone in the state understands that they can help infants and toddlers in those first few years by being there for them, making sure they're not exposed to stressful events that can become toxic, and when they are exposed to stressful events, being there for them to help them through them.
Doctor, break this down a little bit more. The longer-term effects or the long-term effects of some of these toxic stressors include?
Well, yeah, this is what's really interesting. You know, studies have shown for decades now. In fact, there was a landmark study called Adverse Childhood Experiences that focused on that. This is similar to the terminology of toxic stress, so we can use them equally here.
Right.
That showed that infants and young children that were exposed to toxic stress in those first years of life again tended to become adults who not only had increased emotional and mental health problems as one would expect, but they also had increased incidence of physical problems, medical problems such as high blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, and even some forms of cancer. And it's a fascinating study, and now it's 20 years later, and we know so much more. The science could not be more clear about those connections.
There's actually a longitudinal study looking at this?
There have been several studies since then looking at this, and understanding those exposures and what they mean for lifelong health.
But you know, Arturo, one of the things that we've talked about a lot in terms of public policy, what actually Governor Murphy, the state legislature, there are some state legislators who have shown some real interest in this.
Right.
Clearly, there's not enough in the legislature. And again, by the way, check out our website for some of those in-depth interviews with policymakers, legislators, others. We actually just spoke with United States Senator Cory Booker, who spoke about this issue from a national perspective. What can and should policymakers be doing regarding these infants and toddlers, and along with the prenatal care issue?
Yeah. Well, I think first we should say that the current administration in New Jersey, we're very fortunate that they have a big focus on maternal and child health. I think it's a really good
the Murphy
time.
Administration.
Correct. The Murphy
And you're engaging
administration.
them as well. You're talking to some of those folks.
Correct. And, you know, because our foundation, we work best by developing these private-public partnerships.
That's right.
And so we really work with them. And it's not just us. A lot of people work with this administration, and they're really listening. A point about how they're really putting resources into those first few years. They just released more than $4 million in grants throughout the state to address the issues of maternal and infant mortality, particularly black infant mortality.
Black infant mortality?
Correct.
Worse.
Oh, it's been a problem in New Jersey and nationally, but particularly in New Jersey for decades now.
What's this grant going toward? Make it clear.
Well,
For grant from the state government.
two different agencies that
Yes.
applied, and now they're going to tackle this issue in their communities to not only lessen the black infant mortality, but really eliminate the disparity between black infants and non-Hispanic white infants, because it's been honestly a little bit of a challenge addressing it for the last few decades, and a little bit of embarrassment for the state of New Jersey.
An embarrassment.
Yeah. Well, let me give you some numbers.
Sure.
The latest data back from 2015 shows that non-Hispanic white infants mortality, meaning a child who won't make it past their first birthday, that rate was 3.0. Out of every 1,000 children, 3 would die. Black infant mortality in the state of New Jersey had actually decreased from the year before, but decreased to 9.7. That's still 3 times higher.
Almost 10?
Almost 10. It used to be, before that, it was in double digits. So, and it's done this before, where it dipped down a little bit, go back up. And I congratulate the current administration for tackling this with the grants that they've put out there. And we have to remember, black infant mortality rate, that's how many children don't make it past their first birthday. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I suspect that what's going to happen is that they're going to start, while they're addressing the issue, they're also going to find a number of other issues that are related to early childhood development, particularly for this minority population, who happen in many cases to be in lower socioeconomic groups, who happen to live in communities that have greater incidence of those stressors that we tend to talk about.
Finally, before I let you go, Doctor, this is everyone's responsibility, is it not?
It is.
Because?
It is. Because if we really care about our children in our state, and we take care of our children in our state, it's actually going to improve the health of our communities and the health of our state. And it's just not only the right thing to do, but it's really the smart thing to do for the benefit of the state's health and economy. And I think we're foolish not to address it directly.
The initiative is called Right from the Start NJ, in cooperation with the folks at the Nicholson Foundation. I want to thank you, Dr. Brito. Thanks also
Steve.
the folks at the Terrell Fund and others who are involved in this initiative. People have been fighting this fight a long time, also with the Advocates for Children of New Jersey, with our friend Seals Alkine. Thank you, Arturo.
Appreciate the time.
Well
Thanks.
done. See you next time.
Education begins at birth. The brain develops most rapidly from birth to age 3, when critical skills are developed. Parents are the first and best teachers for their children, but for those like me who work, finding quality, affordable childcare can be challenging. But children have the greatest opportunities for success when they learn and have positive interactions with their caregivers. Because learning doesn't start in the classroom, it starts in the cradle.
Also brought to you by Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey. Healing begins here. And by the New Jersey Education Association.